The first thing my aunt said when I arrived was, "Oh, good. You're here." Not, "It's nice to see you." Not, "How was the drive?" Just relief. Like I had finally delivered something she had been waiting for. I stood in the lobby of the Holloway Lake Hotel with my suitcase beside me, rainwater still dripping from my coat, and looked at her. Aunt Vivian. She smiled quickly and kissed the air beside my cheek. "Marina." Finally. I got here as soon as I could. The highway was closed for almost 40 minutes. Yes, yes. Of course. She was already looking past me. I turned. My cousin Tessa was walking through the lobby in a cream-colored dress, talking loudly into her phone.
She looked up when she saw me.
For a second, neither of us smiled. Then she ended her call. "Well," she said, "look who decided we were still family." There it was. The first insult. We had been in the same building for less than 30 seconds. I smiled politely. "Hello, Tessa." She looked me up and down. "You look tired. 6 hours of driving will do that." "Well, at least you made it before dinner." Aunt Vivian clapped her hands. "Wonderful. Now we just have one small problem." I should have known. In my family, the word small problem usually meant someone had made a decision involving me without asking. What problem? Aunt Vivian's smile tightened. There was a mix-up with the rooms. I looked toward the reception desk. The hotel lost my reservation? Oh no. She said it too quickly. Tessa folded her arms. "We needed your suite." I looked at her. "You needed my suite." "Technically, yes." "Why?" Tessa sighed as if I were making her explain something obvious. "Because the Harringtons arrived. And they're important." I waited. That was apparently the entire explanation. I had been assigned a Lakeview suite 3 months earlier because my aunt had organized this reunion and asked everyone to confirm attendance. I had confirmed. I had booked time away from work. I had driven 6 hours. And now, because some people my cousin wanted to impress had shown up, I no longer had a room. "Where am I staying?" I asked. Aunt Vivian touched my arm.
"We found something."
That phrase worried me even more. She led me through the lobby.
Past the elevators.
Past the ballroom where hotel staff were setting up for the reunion dinner. Past a corridor I doubted most guests ever used. Finally, she opened a heavy gray door. Warm air hit my face. The sound of machinery hummed somewhere nearby. I looked inside. There was a narrow bed against one wall, a chair, a tiny sink, and across the room, behind a folding divider, were 2 industrial washing machines. I stared.
Tessa laughed.
"It's actually kind of cute." I slowly turned toward her. "This is a laundry room." "It's a converted laundry room," Aunt Vivian corrected. I looked at her. "I'm sleeping in a laundry room. Only for 2 nights. 2 nights. You can stay with us tomorrow night if the Harringtons leave early." I looked at the bed again. There was no window. The air smelled faintly of detergent. I had spent more comfortable nights in airport lounges. "Tessa gets my suite?" "She has guests," Aunt Vivian said. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. My aunt looked offended. "Marina, please don't make this into something." "Something? You haven't been to a reunion in 4 years." 3.
Fine.
3. You come back and immediately you're upset about a room.
No.
I picked up my suitcase. "I'm upset because you gave my room away before I arrived and decided I would be grateful for a laundry room." Tessa rolled her eyes. "You always make everything so dramatic." I looked at her. Then I looked at my aunt. And suddenly, I remembered why I had stopped coming to these reunions. I had spent years thinking the problem was distance.
My job.
My schedule. But standing there, holding the handle of my suitcase, I realized something simpler. I had stopped coming because every time I came back, my family reminded me exactly where they believed I belonged. Somewhere useful. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere out of the way. I set my suitcase down. "Fine." Aunt Vivian blinked. "Fine. I'll take it." Her face relaxed immediately. Tessa smiled.
"See?
That wasn't so hard." I looked directly at her.
"No."
I said. "It wasn't. And I meant it." because they had no idea why I was really there. The truth was, I hadn't returned to the Cole family reunion because I missed anyone. I hadn't returned because I wanted to reconnect. And I certainly hadn't returned because my aunt's dramatic invitation about bringing the whole family together again had touched my heart. I was there because of Miles Carter. Miles was the executive director of the Cole Community Foundation, a charity my family had proudly supported for more than 20 years. The foundation paid for scholarships, housing assistance, emergency grants, and local community programs. Every year at the reunion, my Uncle Graham stood in front of everyone and talked about service, generosity, legacy. He loved that word, legacy. My family name appeared on the foundation's website,
On plaques.
on scholarship certificates, on a large framed photograph hanging in my uncle's office. For most of my life, I believed the foundation was the best thing my family had ever created. Then, 8 months earlier, a set of financial records landed on my desk. I was a forensic accountant. Most people heard that and imagined I spent my days hunting criminals. The reality was less glamorous.
Spreadsheets.
Invoices, transfers, audits, patterns hidden inside thousands of transactions. I specialized in financial fraud involving nonprofit organizations and private foundations. I followed money. That was my job. And 8 months earlier, while assisting on an investigation involving a regional grant network, I noticed something strange. 3 companies were receiving payments from the Cole Community Foundation. The amounts weren't enormous individually. $40,000 here, $75,000 there, $120,000 for consulting. But the companies had something in common. They all existed mostly on paper. And they all led back, eventually, to Miles Carter. At first, I thought it was a conflict of interest. Then I thought it was poor bookkeeping. Then I found the second account. And everything changed. I had removed myself from the investigation immediately. I disclosed my connection. I provided the information I had. And because of my professional background, the investigative team later asked me to assist only as a technical consultant. But there was a problem. The annual family reunion was taking place at the exact hotel where the foundation's biggest donors would be gathered. Miles would be there. Several financial documents we needed were likely to be there. And investigators had reason to believe someone involved in the scheme planned to destroy records before the following week's formal audit. That was why I came. Not to accuse anyone. Not to expose anyone. Not to get revenge. I came because I had been asked to help identify a financial trail if certain records were recovered. My family didn't know that. They thought I was still good with numbers. That was how Uncle Graham usually described my career. Good with numbers. Tessa once called me the human calculator. Nobody ever asked what I actually did. Nobody except my grandmother. She had died 5 years earlier. And after she was gone, there were fewer and fewer people who asked questions before making assumptions about me. I walked into the converted laundry room and closed the door. The washing machines rumbled softly. I sat on the narrow bed. Then my phone vibrated. A message. Detective Ruiz, are you settled in? I stared at it, then typed, Marina, you wouldn't believe where my family put me. 3 dots appeared. Detective Ruiz, do I want to know? I smiled. Marina, no. But I'm here. Her response came almost immediately. Detective Ruiz, good. Don't do anything unusual. Don't confront anyone. We'll contact you if we need you. I looked at the message. Then toward the washing machines. Good luck with that, I whispered. Because with my family, unusual usually started before dinner. And I had no idea just how much worse things were about to become. By 7 that evening, the hotel ballroom was full. Long tables stretched beneath crystal chandeliers. A jazz trio played near the windows. The lake outside was dark except for reflections from the hotel lights. For anyone walking in, it probably looked elegant. For me, it looked like a battlefield with linen napkins. I found my assigned seat, at the far end of the table. Of course, across from 2 cousins I barely knew. Beside my uncle's business partner. Tessa, meanwhile, sat near Uncle Graham and Aunt Vivian. She was surrounded by people who mattered. At least according to the seating chart. I sat down. My cousin Derek leaned toward me. So, where are you staying? I looked at him. The laundry room. He laughed. Then stopped. You're joking.
No.
He looked toward Aunt Vivian. Seriously? Apparently, the Harringtons needed my room. Derek frowned. That's ridiculous. I was surprised. Not because he cared. Because someone had finally said it out loud. Then Tessa overheard. Oh my God. Can we stop talking about the room? Everyone looked at her. She smiled. Marina said she was fine. I looked at her. I said I would take it. Same difference.
No.
It wasn't. But I didn't correct her. Dinner began. Uncle Graham stood to welcome everyone. He was 62 years old, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and still carried himself like every room belonged to him. When he smiled, people smiled back. When he told a story, everyone listened. He had been the head of our family for so long that I sometimes wondered whether he remembered there had ever been a time when he wasn't. Family, he began. Everyone raised their glasses. I didn't. There's nothing more important. Aunt Vivian looked toward me. I almost laughed. Nothing more important. Except, apparently, an important guest needing my hotel suite. Uncle Graham continued talking about our family's history. The foundation. My grandfather. The sacrifices people had made. Then he called Miles Carter to stand. Miles was 48.
Tall.
Perfectly groomed. The kind of man who could shake your hand and make you feel like you had known him for years. He smiled as the room applauded. Without Miles, Uncle Graham said, the foundation wouldn't be what it is today. More applause. I watched Miles. He didn't look nervous. Not even slightly. If I had not spent months reviewing numbers connected to his work, I might have believed the performance. He raised his glass. To generosity. Everyone repeated it. To generosity. I finally picked up my water. Then I saw him looking at me.
Miles.
His smile faded for less than a second. Our eyes met. He knew who I was.
Of course he did.
He had met me at previous reunions. But something about the way he looked at me felt different. Longer. More careful. I looked away first. My phone buzzed beneath the table. I checked it. Detective Ruiz. Did Carter see you? I typed without looking up. Marina. Yes. 3 dots. Then, Detective Ruiz. Stay calm. I almost smiled.
Stay calm.
As if I had another choice. Then, Uncle Graham called my name. Marina. I looked up. Everyone was watching me. Yes. He smiled. Tell everyone what you do now. My shoulders tightened. Normally, this was where someone said something vague and someone else changed the subject. But tonight, Uncle Graham seemed genuinely interested. I'm a forensic accountant. Tessa laughed. She's good with numbers. A few people smiled. I looked at her, then back at Uncle Graham. I investigate financial records. His smile remained. For banks. Sometimes. What else?
Companies.
Private organizations. Non-profits. I saw Miles lower his glass. Very slowly. Uncle Graham nodded. Sound exciting. Sometimes. What kinds of things do you find? There was no way he could know. No way. But the room felt colder. I rested my hands on the table. Usually people don't realize what their records are saying. Miles looked directly at me. And what do records say? His tone was pleasant. Almost curious. I smiled. They say whatever the numbers prove. Silence. Then Derek laughed. Well, that sounds ominous. The room relaxed. People began talking again. Miles raised his glass. I watched him drink. Then I looked down at my plate. Because beneath the table, my phone had buzzed again. Detective Ruiz. We may have a development. Stay where you are. I read the message twice. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about my room anymore. The dinner continued. Or, at least, everyone pretended it did. I couldn't focus. Every few minutes, I glanced toward the ballroom entrance. Nothing. A waiter refilled my water. Someone beside me told a story about a cruise. My aunt asked whether anyone wanted dessert. Meanwhile, my phone sat beneath my napkin.
Silent.
10 minutes passed. then 20. Finally, a hotel employee approached me. He was young, maybe 25. Nervous. Miss Cole. I stood. Yes. Someone left this for you. He handed me a plain white envelope. No name. No stamp. I looked at it. Who? I don't know. It was left at the desk. My heart began beating harder. Thank you. I waited until he left. Then I slipped one finger beneath the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No signature. No explanation. Just one sentence. You should have stayed away from family business. My blood went cold. I read it again, then folded the paper. I didn't look around immediately. That was the first rule Detective Ruiz had given me. If you believe someone is watching, don't show them you know. I placed the note inside my purse. Then I sent a message. Marina, someone left me a note. The reply came quickly. Detective Ruiz, photograph it. Don't touch it more than necessary. Where are you? I took a picture beneath the tablecloth. Marina, ballroom. A minute later. Detective Ruiz, we're coming in. Don't leave. I looked up. Across the room, Tessa was laughing. Uncle Graham was speaking to Miles. Aunt Vivian was checking her phone. My family, business partners, friends, donors. Somewhere among them was someone who knew enough to warn me. Maybe they knew I was involved. Maybe they only suspected. Either possibility was bad. Then Miles turned. And for one brief second, I saw something I hadn't seen before.
Fear.
He looked toward my purse. Then away. I stood. Tessa noticed. Where are you going? Restroom. Again? I looked at her. I've been sitting here for 2 hours. She shrugged. Fine. I walked toward the hallway. I had almost reached the ballroom doors when someone grabbed my arm. I turned sharply. It was Noah Bennett, the hotel manager. I knew him only vaguely from check-in. He looked terrified. Miss Cole, please. I pulled my arm free. What? I need to talk to you.
Now.
Yes. I looked toward the ballroom. Noah, I really...
Please.
Something in his voice stopped me. He glanced over his shoulder, then lowered his voice. Someone accessed the hotel security system. My stomach tightened. What? They used an administrative terminal. What does that have to do with me? I don't know. He looked frightened, but someone deleted footage from the last hour. I thought of the envelope. Who has access? Very few people. Can you recover it? I don't know. Why are you telling me? Because Detective Ruiz told me to contact you if anything unusual happened.
I stared at him.
You've spoken to Detective Ruiz? Yes. When? Yesterday. I felt anger rise. Nobody had told me the hotel manager knew. Noah continued. She said there could be an investigation here. And she didn't tell me much. Smart woman. He almost smiled. Then the ballroom lights flickered.
Once. Twice.
And went out. Someone screamed. The room fell completely dark. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but confusion. Then emergency lights came on. A dull red glow filled the ballroom. People stood. Chairs scraped. Someone near the entrance shouted for the hotel staff. Uncle Graham's voice rose above everyone. Stay calm.
Of course he said that.
People like Uncle Graham always believed they were responsible for calm. I reached for my purse. The envelope was still inside. My phone was there too. I checked the screen. No service. Not no signal. No service. The hotel's internal system must have gone down. Noah ran toward the stage. Please remain where you are. Tessa grabbed Aunt Vivian's hand. What happened? I don't know. Miles wasn't at his seat. I looked around. He was gone. My stomach dropped. I grabbed Noah's sleeve as he passed. Where's Miles Carter? He looked confused. I don't know. He was here. Noah looked toward the table, then toward the exit. I'll check. Don't go alone. He stared at me. Why? Just don't. He hesitated, then nodded. I moved toward the ballroom doors. My phone vibrated. One bar of service appeared. A message. Detective Ruiz. Do not leave the ballroom. Then another. Detective Ruiz. Carter may be attempting to remove evidence. I typed. Marina, he's gone. No reply. I looked toward the hallway. Every instinct told me to stay. That was also what Detective Ruiz had ordered.
But then I heard something.
A metallic crash. Somewhere behind the ballroom. I froze. Another sound. A door closing. I turned toward Noah. He was still trying to calm guests. Nobody else had heard. Or if they had, they ignored it. I took one step toward the hallway. Then another. And told myself I was not going after Miles. I was simply checking the corridor. That was the lie I used to justify following the sound. The service hallway behind the ballroom was empty. Emergency lights cast long shadows against the walls. I walked slowly. Hello. Nothing. Then I saw an open door. The hotel's records office. A computer monitor glowed inside. I stepped closer. Someone had been there. Papers covered the floor. A file drawer hung open. I took out my phone. No service again. Then I heard breathing. Behind me. I turned. Miles Carter stood at the end of the hallway. He looked different. No smile. No charm. Just anger. Marina. I didn't move. Miles. He closed the distance slowly. You shouldn't be here. I was invited. Don't play games. I looked at his hands. No weapon. That didn't make me feel better. What was in the envelope?
His eyes changed.
So he knew. You tell me. Who gave it to you? Was it you? He laughed once. You think I'd warn you? I think someone wants me scared. Maybe they should. I stepped backward. His face hardened. You have no idea what you've done. I reviewed financial records. You ruined everything.
No,
I said quietly. Someone stealing from a charity ruined everything. He stared at me. For 1 second I thought he might say something. Instead, he moved past me. I turned. Miles.
He stopped.
Where are you going? Somewhere you can't follow. Then he ran. I chased him. Not because I wanted to, because I saw what he had been carrying. A black leather briefcase. And based on everything I knew, that briefcase mattered. Miles disappeared around the corner. I followed. The hotel was confusing in the dark. Service corridors connected to kitchens, storage rooms, staff entrances. I heard footsteps. Then a door slam. I reached it.
Locked.
I pulled the handle. Nothing. I looked through the small glass panel. Stairs. A stairwell. He had gone down. I searched the wall. An emergency release. I pulled it. The door opened. I started down. Then my phone rang. I nearly dropped it. Detective Ruiz. Where are you? She asked. I stopped. In the service stairwell. There was silence. Then, why? I didn't answer. Marina. Miles ran. Get out of there. He has the briefcase. We have officers entering the building. He'll leave through the service exit. Marina, listen to me. Do not chase him. I looked down the stairs. The sound of footsteps echoed below, then stopped. He's still here. Let us handle it. Okay. I turned around and saw Miles standing 2 flights above me. The call went silent. I heard Detective Ruiz shouting through the phone. Miles walked down slowly. You should listen to her. I backed away. Stay where you are. He laughed. You really don't understand, do you? Understand what? That this family protects its own. Something about that sentence hit me. I stopped. What did you say? He came closer. Your uncle knows. My stomach turned. Knows what? Enough.
No.
I raised my voice. What does that mean? Miles smiled. You think I'm the only person moving money? I couldn't breathe. He opened the briefcase. Inside were folders, bank records, contracts, and a small hard drive. You've been looking at the wrong person. Before I could move, a voice echoed from below. Police. Don't move. Miles froze. I did too. Detective Ruiz appeared at the bottom of the stairwell with 2 officers. Miles looked at me, then at them, and suddenly, he threw the briefcase.
Not at me.
Past me. The papers exploded across the stairs. Then he shoved me. I hit the wall.
Hard.
My phone fell. Miles tried to run. An officer tackled him before he reached the next landing. Everything happened at once. Shouting. Footsteps. Papers everywhere. I slid down against the wall. Detective Ruiz ran toward me. Are you hurt? My shoulder. Anything else?
No.
She looked at Miles. He was being handcuffed. Then she looked at the scattered papers. And finally at me. We need you. I stared at her.
Now.
Yes. For what? She picked up one of the papers. Because I think he was telling the truth. The hotel conference room had been turned into a temporary command center. Computers, boxes, evidence bags, police officers, investigators. I sat at a table with ice on my shoulder. Detective Ruiz placed the recover records in front of me. Can you identify anything? I looked through them. The first few pages were familiar. Vendor payments, grant accounts, consulting fees. Then I found a name. Graham Cole Holdings. I stopped.
No.
Detective Ruiz watched me. What? I flipped another page. Then another. The same name appeared again. Money moving through one of the shell companies. Then into a real estate investment account. Then into a private account. I knew that account. My uncle's. I looked up. Did you know about this? Detective Ruiz shook her head. We suspected Carter had help. I stared at the page. How much? We don't know. I began tracing the transfers. Hours of work compressed into minutes because I knew what I was looking for. One payment led to another. Then another. Some were disguised as consulting. Some as property management. Some as donations to smaller charities. Money entered. Money left. By the time I finished the first set of records, my hands were shaking. It isn't just Miles. Detective Ruiz leaned forward. Who else? I didn't want to answer. Not because I was protecting anyone. Because saying it would make it real. My uncle. I thought about dinner. Uncle Graham raising his glass. Talking about generosity. About family. About legacy. Had he known the entire time? Or worse, had the foundation been his idea? I went through the records again. There were signatures, authorizations, a pattern of payments that required someone with authority to approve them. Miles may have created the structure, but Uncle Graham had opened doors. And Aunt Vivian. I found her name too. Not on the fraudulent transfers. On reimbursements, travel, luxury purchases listed as foundation expenses. I felt sick. My family hadn't simply ignored what was happening. At least some of them had benefited. Detective Ruiz sat across from me. Are you able to continue? I laughed bitterly. Apparently I have to.
No.
You don't. I looked at her. And she meant it. That almost broke me. For years, my family had assumed I would do whatever needed to be done. But Detective Ruiz was offering me a choice. I looked down at the papers. Then nodded. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. I took another file. Let's find out everything. At midnight, the police entered the ballroom. Most of the family was still there. Nobody had been allowed to leave while investigators sorted out the situation. When I walked in behind Detective Ruiz, conversation stopped. My hair was a mess. My shoulder hurt. There was dust on my dress. Tessa stared at me. Where have you been? Nobody answered. Then Detective Ruiz asked, Graham Cole. My uncle stood. What is this about? She walked toward him. We need to speak with you.
His face changed.
About what? Financial records connected to the Cole Community Foundation. The ballroom went silent. Uncle Graham laughed. This is absurd. Miles was brought through another entrance in handcuffs. And nobody laughed anymore. Aunt Vivian covered her mouth. Tessa stood. Miles. Uncle Graham looked at him. Then at me.
And I saw it.
Recognition. He knew I knew. Marina, he said. My name sounded different in his mouth. Like a warning. I didn't move. Detective Ruiz said, Mr. Cole, please come with us. What has my niece told you? I looked at him. Nothing. His eyes narrowed. I continued. I didn't have to. One of the officers placed a hand near his arm. Uncle Graham pulled away. This is a misunderstanding. Then you can explain the records. What records? Detective Ruiz nodded toward me. Ms. Cole has identified multiple transactions requiring your authorization.
My aunt looked at me.
Marina? The way she said it, not with concern, with betrayal, as if I had done something to them. Tessa stepped toward me. You brought police to the reunion? I stared at her.
No.
You knew. I knew there was an investigation. You knew and you came here? Yes. Her face twisted.
Why?
I almost answered with everything I had wanted to say for years. Because nobody ever listens to me. Because you thought I was good with numbers. Because you gave my hotel room away. Because you made me sleep in a laundry room. Because none of you ever asked who I was when I wasn't sitting quietly at the end of the table. Instead, I said, because money was stolen from people who needed it. Tessa looked at Uncle Graham, then back at me. This is family.
No.
My voice was quiet. This is a crime investigation. My uncle was led away.
He didn't resist.
That was somehow worse. Aunt Vivian began crying. And Tessa looked at me, as if she had never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. Not really. The next morning, I woke up in a real hotel room. Detective Ruiz had arranged it after the investigation continued past 3 a.m. Not a suite. I didn't care. It had a window.
A bed.
And silence. I had just finished showering when someone knocked. I opened the door. Aunt Vivian stood outside. She looked exhausted. Can we talk? I almost said no. Then I stepped aside. She entered slowly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she looked around the room. Nice room. I laughed. She flinched. I deserve that. Yes. She sat on the edge of the chair. Did you know about Graham?
No.
She looked relieved. Then ashamed of looking relieved. Did you suspect? I suspected something was wrong with the foundation. And Miles. Yes. Graham?
No.
She covered her face. I don't understand. You'll have to ask him. I thought you knew everything. I looked at her. What? Last night. The way the detective asked for you. The way you knew the papers. I sat down across from her. You thought I was just good with numbers. Her eyes filled. Marina.
No.
I raised my hand. Do you know what I do? She looked confused. You're an accountant. That's not what I asked. Silence. I continued. For years, you've introduced me as someone who's good with numbers. She looked down. I didn't know the details. Exactly. I knew you worked with financial investigations. You knew because I told you last year. She nodded slowly. And before that, nothing. I leaned back. You didn't know because you never asked. Aunt Vivian began crying. I didn't feel satisfaction. I expected to. I didn't. I am sorry about the room, she whispered. I looked at her. What? The laundry room. Of all the things that had happened, that was what she chose. Maybe it was easier. I should never have let Tessa take your suite.
No.
I was embarrassed. Why? Because the Harringtons were important. I laughed again. Not because it was funny. More important than me? Her silence answered. I nodded. That was the problem. She looked up. I didn't mean. I know. And I did. That was what made it worse. She hadn't intended to hurt me. She simply didn't consider me. There is a difference. Sometimes being hated hurts less than being invisible. Because hate at least means someone sees you. Tessa came later that afternoon. She didn't knock. She pushed the door open after I said she could enter. Her face was swollen from crying. For once, she wasn't dressed perfectly. She wore sweatpants and one of the hotel's oversized robes. I almost didn't recognize her. Dad's been arrested, she said. I frowned. Your dad? She nodded. My cousin Derek had called earlier. Uncle Graham was facing questioning, and investigators had obtained warrants for additional records. Nobody knew what would happen yet. I know. Tessa sat down, then immediately stood again, then paced. What happens to the foundation? I don't know. What happens to our family? I looked at her. That's a different question.
She stopped.
What do you mean? The foundation can survive if the money is recovered and people rebuild it. And us. I don't know. She stared at me. You don't care. I almost smiled. You made me sleep in a laundry room. Her face tightened. I said I was sorry. No. You said I made things dramatic. She looked away. Fine. Her voice rose. I was wrong. I waited. She looked at me. I was wrong, Marina. That was better. I didn't think about it. I know. I thought you'd be fine. There it was. The same words in a different shape. I thought you'd be fine.
My mother had said it.
My aunt had believed it. Tessa had built her entire relationship with me around it. You always are, she whispered. I looked at her. Maybe I shouldn't have to be. She sat down slowly. And for the first time, she looked like she understood. Not everything. Maybe not even most of it. But something. I didn't know what you did, she said.
No.
I'm sorry. Okay. She looked surprised. Okay. I don't know if that's enough yet. Her eyes filled again. But I heard you. She nodded. And somehow, that was the closest either of us had ever come to an honest conversation. 3 days after the reunion ended, I was sitting in my apartment staring at the same spreadsheet for the 4th time when my phone rang. The number belonged to Detective Elena Ruiz. For a moment, I just watched it ring. I knew why she was calling. Since the night at the hotel, I had tried to convince myself that there was still a chance the worst part was over. Miles Carter had been arrested. The briefcase had been recovered. The records were in police custody. Maybe that was it. Maybe my uncle had made some terrible decisions, but the investigation would eventually prove he wasn't involved in everything. Maybe there was still some version of the family I remembered. I answered. Hello. Marina. Detective Ruiz sounded tired. Is everything okay? There was a pause. I wanted to speak with you before you heard this from someone else. My stomach tightened. Miles. Yes. I closed my laptop. What happened? He agreed to cooperate. For several seconds, I said nothing. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, people moved through the street as if nothing had changed. Cars stopped at red lights. Someone walked a dog. A delivery truck pulled away from the curb. Ordinary life. Meanwhile, my family was slowly being pulled apart by numbers written on pieces of paper. What did he tell you? I asked. I can't discuss every detail. I understand. But I can tell you this. Your original assessment was correct. Miles didn't act alone. I closed my eyes. I already knew. Maybe not logically. But somewhere inside me, I had known from the moment he said, You think I'm the only person moving money? Graham? I asked. Detective Ruiz didn't answer immediately. Yes. The word was quiet. Still, it felt like something had broken. I leaned against the wall. How long? According to Carter, the arrangement began approximately 7 years ago. 7 years. I thought about that. 7 years of reunion dinners. 7 years of speeches about generosity. 7 years of family photographs taken beside scholarship recipients and oversized donation checks. 7 years. At first, Detective Ruiz continued, it appears Carter created several questionable transactions without your uncle's knowledge. I listened. Then your uncle discovered inconsistencies. Why didn't he report them? That appears to have been the turning point. I laughed softly. There was nothing funny about it. He joined him. Yes. The room became very quiet. Detective Ruiz explained what investigators believed had happened. Miles had built the structure. He created shell companies that looked legitimate enough to survive a casual review. Consulting services, property assessments, community development research, financial advisory work. On paper, the companies appeared to provide services. In reality, some had no employees. Some had no physical offices. One had an address belonging to a mailbox rental business. The foundation paid them. Then, the money moved. Sometimes into accounts controlled by Miles. Sometimes through other companies. Sometimes into investments connected to Graham Cole Holdings. My uncle had not simply signed documents without reading them. The evidence suggested he had approved specific transactions. He had helped move money. He had personally benefited. I sat down slowly. How much? We're still calculating the total. Roughly. Detective Ruiz hesitated. Several $1 million may be involved. I stared at the floor. Several million. Money meant for scholarships, housing programs, emergency assistance. People who probably never knew the help they were supposed to receive had been stolen before it reached them. What about my aunt? There is no evidence at this time that Vivian Cole knew the full extent of the scheme. I breathed out. But she received benefits indirectly. I already understood what that meant. Luxury trips listed as foundation travel. Expensive purchases disguised as event expenses. Payments that helped support a lifestyle she probably believed the family could afford. Did she know where the money came from? We don't know. That answer bothered me. Not because I thought Aunt Vivian was guilty. Because I understood how easily someone could avoid knowing something. You simply stopped asking questions. You accepted the explanation. You told yourself someone else was responsible. You looked away because looking closely might change everything. For years, my family had done that with me. They didn't know what I did because they never asked. They didn't know what I thought because they assumed. Maybe the foundation had survived the same way. Everyone trusting Uncle Graham. Everyone trusting Miles. Everyone believing the family name guaranteed integrity. There's something else, Detective Ruiz said. My grip tightened around the phone. What? We believe Carter learned that you were connected to the initial financial review. I went still. He knew? Yes. Before the reunion? Possibly. I thought about the envelope. You should have stayed away from family business. Was he the one who sent the note? We can't prove it yet. And my uncle? We believe Graham knew you had identified irregularities. That hurt more than I expected. I sat there, unable to speak. At dinner, Uncle Graham had asked me what I did. He had smiled. He had acted curious. Tell everyone what you do now, Marina. He already knew. He knew exactly what I did. Maybe that question hadn't been casual. Maybe he had wanted to see what I would say. Maybe he had been measuring how much I knew. Marina? Detective Ruiz brought me back. I'm here. You don't have to continue helping with this investigation. I looked at the closed laptop on my desk, the spreadsheets, the records, the trail that had brought me back to the hotel. I know. This is personal now. It was personal when I saw my family's name in the records. Yes. I stood again. But it isn't only about them. I looked out the window. If that money was stolen, there are people who were supposed to receive it. That is correct. Then I want to continue. Detective Ruiz was quiet. Are you sure? I thought about the laundry room, the ballroom, Miles telling me that family protected its own. And I finally understood why that sentence had made me so angry. Because families shouldn't protect wrongdoing simply because the wrongdoer shares your name. No, I said. I don't think anyone can be sure about something like this. Then I took a breath. But yes, I want to continue. A week later, I was sitting inside an evidence review room surrounded by boxes. Miles had provided investigators with information they hadn't recovered from the hotel. More accounts, more contracts, more names. I reviewed the records one page at a time. And slowly, the story became clearer. There had been warning signs. Small ones at first. Payments approved unusually quickly. Invoices, without supporting documentation. Consultants paid far more than industry standards. Then larger transfers. And finally, the pattern became impossible to ignore. The fraud had survived for years because everyone involved trusted the wrong people. And because nobody wanted to believe Uncle Graham could be involved. That was the danger of reputation. Sometimes a good reputation protected innocent people, but sometimes it became armor. People saw the family name and stopped looking underneath it. I didn't have that luxury anymore. I followed every number, every signature, every transfer, because the numbers didn't care who Uncle Graham was. They didn't care that he was my family. They didn't remember his speeches. They didn't care about reunion photographs. Numbers had no loyalty. They only recorded what happened. And when I finally finished tracing one of the largest missing transfers, I understood something that changed the way I thought about my family forever. The truth had been there all along, not hidden because it was impossible to find, hidden because too many people had decided not to look. 6 months after the reunion, the Cole Community Foundation still existed.
Barely.
For weeks after the investigation became public, nobody knew whether it would survive. Donors pulled back. Several programs were suspended. The foundation's employees were questioned. Some people resigned simply because they didn't want their names connected to the scandal. Newspapers published articles. Former scholarship recipients wondered whether the money that had helped them had come from somewhere legitimate. And for the first time in decades, the Cole family name wasn't associated with generosity. It was associated with an investigation. I expected to feel ashamed. Instead, I felt something more complicated. Sadness, anger, and relief. Relief because the pretending was finally over. One rainy Monday morning, I received an email from Diane Holloway. Diane was the retired judge appointed to chair the foundation's new independent board. She had known my grandmother for years. Her email was short. Marina, we'd like to discuss the future of the foundation. Are you available this Thursday?
I stared at it for a long time.
Then replied, yes. The foundation office looked almost unrecognizable when I arrived. Uncle Graham's large portrait was gone from the lobby. The framed photographs of charity galas had been removed. Even the reception area had changed. The old sign that read a family tradition of giving was gone. In its place was a smaller message. Service requires trust. Trust requires accountability. I stood there for a moment, then smiled. Diane met me near the conference room. Marina. Judge Holloway.
Please.
Diane. I followed her inside. Several board members were already seated around the table. I recognized some. Community leaders. A nonprofit director. An accountant from outside the family. A former scholarship recipient. Nobody named Cole. That felt important. Diane waited until everyone was seated. Then she spoke. The foundation is going to continue. I looked around the room. Are you sure? We have enough recovered assets to continue some programs. What about the rest? We rebuild. The words sounded simple, but I knew it wasn't. Rebuilding trust would take years. Possibly longer than it had taken to destroy it. Diane slid a folder across the table. We want you to look at something. I opened it. Inside was a proposal. At the top of the first page were words I hadn't expected to see. The Eleanor Cole Scholarship for Financial Accountability and Community Service. I couldn't speak. My grandmother's name. I touched the paper. She would have hated what happened, Diane said gently. I nodded. She would. But she also believed that the response to failure mattered. I remembered my grandmother sitting beside me at the kitchen table when I was 12 years old. I had made a mistake on a math test and cried because I had been so embarrassed. She didn't tell me mistakes were unimportant. She told me something better. Look at what went wrong. Understand it. Then do better. That was who she was. She never looked away from uncomfortable things. Maybe that was why she and I had understood each other. Diane continued. This scholarship would support students entering accounting, nonprofit management, public administration, financial compliance, and related fields. I looked up. Why those fields? Because we need more people who ask questions. Nobody laughed. Diane smiled. We also want you to serve as an independent financial advisor. I blinked. To the foundation? Yes. After everything? Because of everything. I leaned back. For months, I had wondered whether my connection to the foundation would make it impossible for me to ever return. I had imagined leaving the entire situation behind, finding another city, another job, another place where nobody knew my name. But sitting there, I understood something. Walking away wasn't always healing. Sometimes rebuilding something damaged was part of healing too. As an independent advisor, I asked, would I have complete access to the records? Yes. Would the board accept outside audits? Yes. Would there be mandatory conflict of interest disclosures? Yes. Would anyone with family ties get special treatment? Diane smiled.
No.
I looked around the room. Then I asked one final question. What happens if someone here doesn't like what I find? The former scholarship recipient spoke. Then we should have done a better job. That was when I laughed. A real laugh. The first one I had made in that office. I'll do it. The following months were difficult. We rebuilt procedures, reviewed old accounts, created new approval requirements, brought in outside auditors, required multiple signatures for major transactions, established anonymous reporting channels. Every rule existed because someone, somewhere, had once found a way around trust. It was exhausting. But slowly, the foundation began, helping people again. The first new emergency grant was approved. Then a housing assistance program reopened. Then the scholarship committee began reviewing applications. I attended the meeting. A young woman named Priya was selected for financial studies. She had grown up watching her mother struggle to manage debt after her father died. I want to help people understand money before they lose control of it, she said during her interview. Nobody in the room said anything for several seconds. Then Diane looked at me. I knew why. This was the point. Not restoring the Cole name. Not protecting family pride. Helping someone. The way the foundation should have been helping people all along. After the meeting, Diane handed me a framed photograph of my grandmother. It had been found in storage. Eleanor Cole stood beside a group of students at one of the foundation's earliest scholarship events. She wasn't standing in front. She wasn't holding a microphone. She was laughing at something one of the students had said. I took the photograph home. That night, I placed it on my bookshelf. And for the first time since the investigation began, I stopped thinking about what my family had lost. I thought about what we could still build. Not with speeches. Not with a famous last name. Not with expensive dinners. With honesty. With questions. With systems strong enough to survive even when people failed. And maybe that was the best way to honor my grandmother. Not by pretending our family had always been good, but by making sure the next people in charge had fewer places to hide. Exactly 1 year after the reunion, I returned to the Holloway Lake Hotel. This time, I wasn't arriving in the rain with a suitcase in one hand, wondering where I would sleep. I had booked my own room, a simple lakeview room on the top floor. Nothing extravagant. I didn't need extravagant. I only wanted a quiet room, a window overlooking the water, and the certainty that nobody could give it away because someone else was considered more important. When I entered the lobby, Noah Bennett looked up from behind the reception desk. Miss Cole. Hello, Noah. He smiled and picked up my key card. I checked your reservation myself. I raised an eyebrow.
Oh, twice.
I laughed. That's reassuring. He handed me the card. Lakeview room. Top floor. Thank you. Then he lowered his voice. And, before you ask, definitely not a laundry room. I laughed. Good. Hotel policy. Is it?
No.
He smiled. But maybe it should be. As I walked toward the elevator, I glanced down the corridor where Aunt Vivian had once led me to that converted laundry room. A year ago, I had accepted it because everyone expected me to. I told myself it wasn't worth causing a problem. But now I understood. The room itself had never been the real problem. The problem was that people who claimed to love me had assumed I would accept less without question. They believed being strong meant I wouldn't be hurt. And for too long, I had allowed that belief to define me. Not anymore. That evening, the ballroom was full again. The same chandeliers reflected against the windows overlooking the lake. But there were no reunion banners. No speeches about family legacy. This time, the room was filled with students, teachers, community leaders, and donors attending the first annual Eleanor Cole Scholarship Dinner. The foundation had survived. Not unchanged. And that was the point. New financial controls had been established. Independent audits were required. No one person's reputation was considered enough to guarantee trust. We had rebuilt the foundation around something my grandmother always believed. Good intentions meant nothing without accountability. Near the ballroom entrance, Aunt Vivian walked toward me. Marina. Hello, Aunt Vivian. She handed me a small velvet box. Inside was my grandmother's silver bracelet. My breath caught. Where did you find this? Among Graham's belongings. I looked up. He had it. She nodded. I didn't know. My grandmother had promised me that bracelet when I was 16. After her funeral, it disappeared. Aunt Vivian looked down. I should have paid more attention. To what? To everything. She looked back at me. The foundation. Graham. You. For a moment, I said nothing. I spent years believing that if something looked fine from the outside, it probably was. I thought about the charity, the speeches, and the perfect family image. I don't want to live like that anymore, she whispered. I held the bracelet tightly. Then don't. She nodded. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was an honest beginning. Tessa arrived later with flowers. These are for you. I looked at them. Are these a bribe?
She groaned.
Please don't start. I smiled. They're beautiful. Then her expression became serious. I was awful to you last year. Yes. I know. I waited. I've spent a year thinking about why I assumed you would be okay with everything. And because you always were. I remained silent. And because I never thought about what it cost you. That made me look at her. I thought being strong meant nothing hurt you, she said. I was wrong. Yes. I know. She took a breath. I can't change what happened, but I can stop expecting you to accept things just because I think you're capable of surviving them. For the first time, I believed she understood. Maybe not perfectly, but enough. That's a start, I said. She smiled. So, can we start? I looked at her. Yes. Later, Diane Holloway introduced me at the podium. The ballroom became quiet. I looked at the scholarship recipients sitting before me. When I was younger, I began. My family used to call me strong. A few people smiled. I thought that was always a compliment. I paused.
Sometimes it was.
The room grew quiet. But sometimes people call you strong because they expect you to carry things they should never have placed on your shoulders. I looked toward the students. For years, I believed strength meant enduring everything. Staying quiet. Accepting less because someone else needed more. I took a breath. But strength isn't only what you can survive. I thought about the investigation, the records, the questions everyone had avoided. Sometimes strength is asking questions. Sometimes it's reading the details. And sometimes it's refusing to accept an answer simply because the person giving it has power. Then I smiled. And sometimes, when someone tells you not to worry about the numbers, you should definitely look at the numbers.
The room laughed.
I continued. The people who love you should not require you to become invisible to make their lives easier. Silence followed. Know your value. Protect your boundaries. And remember that loyalty does not mean helping someone hide the consequences of their choices. I looked around the ballroom. Real trust doesn't fear accountability. The applause began. And as I stood there, I remembered arriving at this same hotel 1 year earlier. The laundry room. The seat at the end of the table. The feeling that I was expected to accept whatever space others decided to give me. But I didn't need anyone else to recognize my value. It had always been there. The next morning, Noah checked me out. Everything okay with your room? It was perfect. Will we see you again next year? Yes. Then I paused. But Noah? Yes. If someone important needs my room? He smiled. I'll ask you first. Good. I walked outside. The lake shone beneath the morning sun. I had spent too many years waiting for other people to decide where I belonged. I wasn't waiting anymore. Because you don't become valuable when people finally recognize you. And you don't lose your worth because someone else decides you're easier to ignore. Sometimes the biggest change begins when you stop accepting the smallest space someone else has assigned to you. And after everything that happened at the Holloway Lake Hotel, I knew one thing for certain. I would never sleep in the laundry room again.